Expand my words.
That's our first time here.
This trip was really special, and the Shield people are really special, and know that these folks let us in their house, and if they had 5 things to eat, they gave us 4. They really did. And joyfully, joyfully, with huge smiles on their faces. And not only that, but we did like literally photo shoots. Would you do that again? Would you do that again? They're like, they just want to farm. Like they're like, this is. I think truly, I looked at people's faces, and I think people were having fun, and it was a great exchange, and very humbling for all of us. And so I really thank Agros a lot for that experience and the people on these walls. So Salaam Garage basically was founded. I've been working as a professional photojournalist for over 15 years with NGOs around the world, and I saw an opportunity for a lot of people to combine their media making skills, be it professional or amateur, with these amazing NGOs that just don't have the budget or the time or the wherewithal to like make stuff like this. The stories are so precious, and you will never be the same person when you experience things like this. But they just don't have it to put that together. And then we have all these people who really care, and I thought, well, maybe there's an opportunity, and that's the deal with Salaam Garage. And I call it citizen journalism because I don't think it makes any difference, if you're professional or amateur or whatever. These stories are on the walls. You heard the story tonight. I feel really passionate about all of us using all these tools that we have to tell stories for the greater good.
Let me first begin just by saying thank you to EVO for hosting us in the space here, and particularly to Salaam Garage for the work and the labor. It's not the average person that's willing to take time and finances to travel to a part of the world that's extraordinarily remote and foreign, and enter another culture and spend time with people as extraordinary as the people on these walls. And on behalf of Agros, we're really grateful to what you guys have done. In thinking through what I want you guys, as you're driving home tonight, and as you're thinking about these images and about your time on a wet, rainy, late winter night, as you're thinking about this time, I want you to not only think about and be present to how incredible the work that Salaam Garage is, how unique and effective and groundbreaking the work of Agros International is, but I really want you to be present to how extraordinary the people on these walls are. Can I take just 5 or 6 minutes to create that context? 5 or 6 minutes. You hear statistics all the time about poverty. Half the world currently lives on $2.50 a day. 2 billion people in our world live in what's called extreme poverty. They live on less than $1.25 a day. And international institutions, multilaterals, they get at definitions of poverty through income levels, through access to education and healthcare, through what's called an HDI, a Human Development Index. And we're all clear, and particularly in Seattle, I think we're all very clear that no single statistic can ever capture the suffering, the loss of dignity that a single individual experiences in what's called extreme poverty, where essential fundamental human dignity gets eroded and destroyed. One of the things that I think makes Agros particularly unique is how we define poverty. We're an international NGO. We're based in Seattle. We work in 5 countries: Guatemala, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Honduras, and with indigenous Mayan refugee populations in Chiapas, Mexico. We've got 42 village projects. What we do in a nutshell is we help extremely rural poor families come together and start and then develop and then eventually own their own sustainable farming village with assets, training, and knowledge to thrive for generations to come. We begin with this definition of poverty that I think is unique in international development circles. We define poverty as broken relationships. And that's not just a Hallmark greeting card sentiment. You can measure broken relationships in any context of extreme poverty at a community-wide level. For us, here in the United States, we live in relatively healthy communities where relationships with economic institutions, with governments, with the environment, with access to education and healthcare, where those core relationships that make up a healthy society are largely intact. For the communities living in extreme poverty, those relationships break down. The people that you see on these walls have lived through generations of these broken relationships. Isolated, alone, forgotten, relationships that we take for granted, eroded, and in many cases destroyed. Agros is in the business of helping these families build back these relationships. We don't consider ourselves a charitable organization. There's field staff that when we began to work with a group of families initially, we promised families three things: trabajo, trabajo, y más trabajo. Work, work, and more work. We provide loans for land. Of those 2 billion people that live in extreme poverty, the majority of them are rural. Rural people depend on land. They depend on agriculture for their livelihoods, for food security, for a place of home. Many of the extreme poor who live in rural areas don't have that access. All throughout Central America, in the countries where we work, access to land is a key distinguishing factor of why these families live in extreme poverty. They have to rent land, they're migratory, and that fundamental place of security is gone. Agros buys land. We buy land privately. Families begin to work the land. We've got agronomists on staff that help them to develop agricultural businesses, access markets. We've got a community development framework that works with making sure that women are stakeholders in the process, making sure that women are involved in leadership, making sure that access to healthcare and education is secured. And we'll take a group of families working in making roughly 25 cents a day, 50 cents a day, $1 a day, and within 10 years, they become landowners. They've got agricultural businesses. They've got access, not just, in many cases, not just to local and regional markets, but they're selling coffee and chilies and snow peas to international markets. Their kids are going to school. In several of the villages on these walls here, there are kids that are going to university, something completely unheard of just a generation ago. And if I could sort of land the plane and give you a sense of why I think these people on these walls are so extraordinary through just one quick story. These people live in a region of Guatemala called the Achille Triangle. If you're familiar with the history of Guatemala, they went through a civil war where for 36 years there was a conflict between the government and a group of leftist rebels. And you go into these communities and you talk to them about their experience during that time, and they talk about it in terms of being caught between two cannons, being caught between two armies. In the aftermath of this war, after the peace accords were signed, the UN actually describes what these people went through as a virtual genocide. Over 200,000 men, women, and children were slaughtered through a very intentional policy to lay entire villages to waste. One of the women that I will, as long as I live, never forget, her name is Tomasa. She lives in a village that is in Agros village, close to the villages where these pictures are. I sat down and she told me her story. She had 2 daughters, and let's see if I can get through this story without weeping. She had 2 daughters, and on a particular morning, all she had to give them was a couple of hardened plantains and a little bit of water with some coffee beans in it. That's all they had to eat for the day. They had to go work in the fields. A hard day of labor faced them. In the middle of the afternoon, the army arrived and began attacking them. Bombs began exploding, and the army came in and started slaughtering the men, the women, and the children. Tomasa's 2 little girls, they brought her in front of her, they threw those girls on the ground and they killed them in front of her. And then they shot her and left her to die. She healed from her wounds. And as she tells this story, she talks about how in the process of healing, she had this prayer for the people that killed her daughters. And her prayer was, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. She had compassion for the people that killed her children, because she said, what kind of deformity how deformed must their souls be to have done something like that? That sense of compassion, that sense of basic dignity is so representative of so many of these people who in the aftermath of war, of poverty, of struggles that we will never know, have faced it and are now beginning to rebuild their lives. Agros just facilitates the process. We offer credit. We offer training. We come alongside and help them begin to experience that they matter, that they are worth something. You know, Tomasa said after the war, we were forgotten, completely forgotten. And then Agros showed up. And Agros has kept their promise, which is to give us hope and dignity and a place that we can own ourselves and give to our children. That's fundamentally what Agros does. We restore those broken relationships through very technical processes involving credit, land ownership, training, empowerment, but ultimately it's restoring human relationships in a way that builds back fundamental human dignity that changes generations. And we are so grateful to Salaam Garage for capturing glimpses of it. You guys have done beautiful work. And with that, let me turn it over to Amanda.
First of all, yeah.